Ladies and gentlemen, I call to order the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners business meeting this April 14th, the day before tax day. Actually, I think they gave it till Monday this year for some reason. I'll ask Mr. Krupp to do our roll call.
Well, good morning, Commissioners, and I have submitted my taxes for this year, so all done with that. So we're joined this morning with Mr. Stephen Madcore from County Counsel and also Mary Rathke, our Clerk of the Board. I'll start with a roll with Commissioner Bernard. Here. Commissioner Smith. Here. Commissioner Savas.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader. Here. Chair Ludlow.
Here, would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first order on the agenda is citizens' communication, and we'll start with Kathleen Walker and Les Poole. Invitations, I know what these are.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Something about bite, yes.
Good. I can't be there.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Walker from the Mount Hood Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here filling some really big shoes. Those are the shoes of the late, great Bob Reeves. I think he wore a size 16 shoe. We always joked about his big feet. But anyways, for years now, for almost 10 years that we've been having the bite, Bob has come here to your great commissioner meetings and invited you all personally to the bite. And I wanted to try to do that also gracefully. Extend a great invitation to the Bite of Mount Hood. It's April 23rd, so in a week from this Saturday, and it's at 5 p.m. And there's a great deal at the resort at the mountain. The rooms there are usually $169. They have reduced them to $79.99. And so it's a great deal, but you have to move really fast to get a room because they are almost all booked up. We put the bite on in the springtime to kind of help boost that shoulder season for tourism up on the mountain, and it's been very successful so far. So like I said, the resort is almost all fully booked. So please book a room there. We've got hundreds of auction items again this year that are just fabulous. I know Martha got a great Smith & Hawken-like plant stand last year. I know some of you all have got Smith & Hawken. Smith & Hawken. It's a nice, beautiful cedar plant stand. Anyways, I know some of you have come and gotten plants and things like that. So we've got some fabulous auction items there, and it's a great fundraiser for the whole community. So please come. Thank you very much.
If you have a truck, bring it.
Yeah, if you have a truck, because if you have plants and everything.
So to clarify, I did buy, colleagues, if you don't mind, Jerry, so it is a big garden table, planting table, and I got it, and then I thought, I have no way to get this down to my house. Yeah. So I had to bribe my boys with an Italian dinner to go up with their truck and get the darn thing, because it was huge, to bring it down. But I use it all the time, especially this time of year. So.
And you got a really good deal on it.
Yes, I did. It was great.
Yes, you did. So there's some great deals to be had up there. Yep. Please come out to the Bite of Mount Hood.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Mr. Poole.
Good morning. Always appreciate the opportunity to speak. Les Poole, Clackamas County. $80 a night for the resort at the mountain. It's almost getting into my price range. There was a candidates forum last night in Oak Grove, and I think most or all of you were there. And the citizens like to see that, regardless of who they're supporting. You got to get out in front of us. And as we've all probably talked amongst ourselves, it's an interesting time here in Clackamas County. One of the things I heard from a Senate candidate who's the current state rep from HD 41 was a discussion about revenue. Revenue is a great word, isn't it? That means tax money. And they're short of revenue. Do I need to say anything more? They're short of revenue in Salem. That's her campaign platform, basically. And we need to spend more money that we don't have. It's not working. It's it's got to change. So I'm not here to beat up on a state rep because I'm at a county commission meeting, but hopefully I'm not the only one in the room that sits there and gets tired of hearing about revenue and new sources of revenue and higher taxes. And I do appreciate everyone answering my question last week about IP 28. It's not a practical idea. We can't afford it. It's a really awkward situation that they're creating because we can only take so much money from people that are earning, and we can only subsidize so much before everything around us is in the same shape the roads are. Last thing I want to mention is that, actually I'd like to thank Metro for banning dogs in all dog parks. That was amazing. Sorry, I thought I'd slip that in there. Last thing I want to mention is about roads. Hopefully, as this budget season moves along, we'll have a presentation, we'll see a draft budget, we'll get an idea of how much is going to go towards roads, because if we don't have a good down payment, so to speak, like you created in last year's budget, come November, it's going to be next to impossible to get something past the voters. And I don't know what the assessments or what the county's income, not income, but where are we going to be budget-wise? But again, we can't get into this specious discussion that if we take money for roads, it's taken from some other place. If we have more money to work with, as we did last year, and we allot some to roads and we increase other budgets, all those other budgets went up. So it's really, really critical that we're careful about what we do with the roads, because come November, I want to be one of the people that's willing to vote yes on a fee, and typically I vote against them. So my time is up, and as always, I do appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we are budgeting, we are allocating funds, which means that if we don't allocate to one department, that means, and give it to somebody else, that means that department suffers. I've said it before, and I appreciate roads, but I believe in user fees, because our budget is flat this year. There's going to be about $1 million left for policy-level decisions. And when it comes to vulnerable citizens, specifically, I'll say it again, juvenile, disabled seniors, mental health, and public safety, to my way of thinking, especially when there's an ORS that says we shall not use ad valorem taxes for roadway purposes, then by golly, I believe that money needs to go to help our most vulnerable citizens, and users should pay for the roads. That's just my opinion. I've expressed it before. John Hampton, I believe, and then just the name Paul. Is that you? Oh, Paul Egger. But you didn't put your last name down, Paul. Come up. And Hampton? Joan Hampton. Joan Hampton? John Hampton? Oh, Joan. Your H is closed at the top, I swear. I just noticed it. Thank you. Either one of you, please.
Chair Ledlow and Commissioners, I recently sent you out an email talking about transportation considerations that are happening at the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. The problem is if we don't address and figure this problem out, if we get 6,000 cars coming to one site, we will close off Highway 99. This means that if somebody's trying to run a business in Canby,
Yeah.
or try to create jobs, we could literally stop the flow of traffic with the mindset that's going on. That's equally true of Highway 213 at Beaver Creek Road with what's being planned. And what they've done, the City of Oregon City has done, they've changed the methodology for how you measure congestion to volume over capacity. The state regulates all of these roads because these are state strategic urban freight routes identified on the RTSP, of which I was a member of. What that means is that freight needs to travel. And on 213, they decided to allow unbridled development along there without solving any of the problems. They said, just learn to live with congestion. So if we get to a point where congestion takes an intersection, a strategic intersection, to a point where it is dead stop. Right now on Highway 99 at Main Street, getting through there, it's at level of service F, that's the state methodology for regulating and judging it, for 3 hours a day. I can see that's right now. And if we start bringing in 6,000 cars, and on your report you said 87% of the people coming into Oregon City come by single occupancy vehicles. We can't bring light rail into the site. What do? Same thing is true up in 213. And the problem is if you guys don't step in and start getting involved in addressing this, there are very limited methodologies to mitigate that level of congestion, and they are bicycles, transit, buses. How am I going to solve the problem? And one of the critical issues is moving a lot of these people that come into town a long way away from that intersection. Because if we don't, the people in Canby, the people in Molalla, all of the rural areas that are served by this, they're going to be screaming for heads. And it might often be your head. So this is just a heads up. Thank you.
Scream for our heads and our heads up. All right. Got it. Thanks, Paul.
I'd like to comment.
Oh, Commissioner Smith, sorry.
Thank you. Well, Paul, you just made the argument in support of my case for reopening the Willamette Falls locks, because that will relieve freight and congestion. And tomorrow we have our third state task force meeting on this topic. We've identified, and we will continue to identify, businesses who want to use that, and we've already got several signed up. I think there's going to be a new resurgence of that as identifying the Willamette River and the locks as a major transportation hub, and that's really important. I do not share your opinion, however, that we need to be alarmist about the Legacy Falls project, because currently Oregon City is doing the planning concept for the traffic along with ODOT and along with the designers down there. It would be my biggest dream that we would have so much tourism and additional traffic that it would shut down 99E. I think we can look forward to an expansion of that area. It's the #1 top planning and discussion issue on the development of that locks and on the Legacy project, as well as parking, where are we going to park. So that is all being evaluated right now. And when you said Oregon City has downgraded their traffic analysis, that comes from the state. The state did that several years ago and has really affected the quality of our life in Oregon as we used to know it. We have congestion and we've been told to deal with it. Well, this commission doesn't really accept that too much. We keep pushing for additional transportation packages at the risk of sounding like a broken record. We have advocated for the expansion of Abernathy Bridge, the 3rd lane, and I-205. We have worked on the Sunrise Corridor project, Phase 1. We're pushing for Phase 2. We've gone out to the voters to ask them if they want to maintain the roads. I understand this vote is maintenance. It's not a capacity issue. But regardless, it needs to be dealt with. And we're engaging the citizens as much as we know how and are able to do. So thank you for bringing these issues up. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Bernard?
Well, I just want to add that, I think that it's going to be really important for Oregon City to think about how they spend their urban renewal money, and perhaps a parking structure down at Oregon City Shopping Center might be a good idea. I've got to drive it today just because you brought this up, but there's a track that actually goes out there that could possibly use a streetcar that goes through downtown Oregon City's Main Street and then into the site and then back out, which might relieve some of that. But that's a really tough area to solve with a big giant rock wall there. But I would assume that the city of Oregon City and ODOT's thinking about that. This is pretty long term. I hope I'm alive when this occurs. It's going to be slow. You know, if I were doing the project, I would have had tractors in there yesterday, tearing some of those old buildings down. But this is long term, and I think we have time. But it definitely should be something on our radar. So thank you.
Ms. Hamilton, finally, welcome.
Well, thank you. My name is Joan Hamilton, and I'm a citizen of Oak Grove, unincorporated Clackamas County. And I wanted to thank you all very much for the town hall meeting March 30th at Riverside Elementary School. I really appreciated your coming. I know it's late in the evening, makes your day long. But it was a particularly good town hall meeting, I thought. I was attending primarily to hear your comments about the Oak Lodge Gladstone Library issues. And so I wanted to take the opportunity today to highlight two particular points that were discussed there. The first is that the need for the Oak Lodge Community Library to be kept in the Oak Lodge community itself. That is, I believe you heard a lot of citizen enthusiasm for that. Second, I want to thank you for continuing to consider lease options for the Oak Lodge Library, and not, instead of considering buying a new building or building a new building, considering continuing to look at lease options. And some of the lease options that were mentioned in that meeting were continuing the current location on McLaughlin, the Goodwill location on Concord, since Goodwill is leaving that space, possibly even the Safeway building on McLaughlin, or even the Concord Elementary School, and there may be other options that you are considering. So I wanted to thank you for, I think, carefully listening to that. A lot of you made some very interesting comments that made me feel like you were listening to the citizens of my area. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
I do have one question for Joan, and that is, we've been talking with a number of folks, and back a couple, 3 years ago, the proposal back then was a library on Oatfield Road in Gladstone, about 19,000 square feet, the original proposal. And it seemed like people were warming up to that, you know, somewhat reluctant because it wasn't in a great location,
Right.
and the traffic on Oatfield was pretty intense. A traffic study was one of the things that we wanted to have done, especially in the afternoon hours when there's a lot of traffic congestion on Oatfield. But what were your thoughts on that library? Were you in favor of that concept?
Well, I was not retired at the point, and so I was unconscious. I really was not aware of that issue. So since I retired, I've become a lot more aware of the issues going on. But my understanding is that, yes, it would have been a good idea. With hindsight, with some of the things that I've heard about, I mean, it sounded like there was general enthusiasm for that location.
Yeah, and I think the size issue, you know,
The size is
19,000
of
square feet.
huge importance. I think one thing that I don't know enough about that particular location, but I think it's very important to serve the older folks and the children in the area, that it be someplace near public transportation. And that really bothers me about the possibility of having, regardless of the size, having the library located in Gladstone, because there's a huge population of small children and old people that have trouble getting around. And so I think I think location and access for that population is particularly important and needs to be considered.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Well, thank you for coming and
It's all right.
expressing your gratitude. One thing that has become increasingly more clear to me as I delve into what the intent of the vote was 10 years ago, because you always go back to the original, what was said, and nobody can actually, testify exact. But what the commissioners had put out in pamphlets and in mailings was that this would be a joint library. And that was very clear. I mean, I have old mailers in my file that says Oak Grove and Gladstone would share the facility. And I think that goes to the intent of what the commission had at the time. And I appreciate some people wanting to redo history and get theirs in and stuff, but my opinion is that's probably how we're going to end up. We have asked and pleaded with the Gladstone City Council to form a committee made up of people proportionately. That means more people will be from the Oak Grove area than there would be from Gladstone to work on this problem, and we hope that they would be very sincere and do their due diligence and respect all the opinions involved in that. And since we initiated the 180-day MOU cancellation process, 1 month has gone by in that, and we have 5 months left, and we see no progress on that issue with the people who are in charge of it. So I hope they do make some movement, or, gee, we'll have to make the decision, and then everybody will be mad at us.
Which happens a lot. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate your time. Mr. Krepp, we have 2 public hearings, and
Yes, Mr. Chair, the first public hearing involves a second reading and adoption of Ordinance Number 02/2016, which would ratify an intergovernmental agreement that would create the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors, and the action also involves approval of said agreement. We have Mr. Nate Boderman from County Counsel's office here to talk with you about this ordinance, and Mike Besner is here as well in case the commissioners have any questions. So,
Good morning, Commissioners. This morning we have for you the second reading of an ordinance that will assist in the creation of a statewide organization known as the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors. This is an organization that the county currently participates in, and as we discussed before and as we explained in the staff report materials, this is affiliated with Oregon Association of Counties, but actually has no legal status at this time. So the purpose of this exercise is to put in place a formal entity that will allow them to conduct business moving forward. ORS 190 allows units of local government to create these intergovernmental entities by way of intergovernmental agreements, so that's what we're doing here this morning. All counties in Oregon currently have staff represented in this organization. Clackamas currently has 8 staff members that are affiliated with the organization. The goal is that the majority of counties in Oregon, if not all, will pass a similar ordinance and have this new formal entity in place by July of this year. A question was raised at the last hearing regarding our financial contribution to this organization, so I wanted to report back that last year we paid $1,740 in dues. There are annual conferences that are sponsored by this organization that we may or may not participate in, but at any rate, our participation in the organization is on an at-will basis, I guess you can say, and so we're able to discontinue at any time, although that's certainly not our intent to do so. It's staff's recommendation that the board read the ordinance by title only and proceed to adopt and approve the materials that we included in your packet. So with that, be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioners, any questions? All right, I'm going to open the public hearing and ask if anyone wishes to speak on this matter. I'm going to close the public hearing and announce there will be no board action on this item today.
Wait, no, you're reading.
Whoa,
You're on the wrong one.
I'm on the wrong one. Mary prepares this so nicely for me, and then I mess it up. All right, I would entertain a motion.
I move we read the ordinance by title only.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Bernard, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Further discussion? All right, Mary?
Commissioner Bernard.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Ludlow.
Aye, passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm going to read the ordinance by title.
Yeah,
It's ordinance number ordinance number 02-2016, ordinance ratifying intergovernmental agreement creating the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors.
All right.
Ask for a motion.
Yeah, I'll get it right, yeah. So I ask for the motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we adopt ordinance number 02-2016, ratifying an intergovernmental agreement creating the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors and approval of the new intergovernmental agreement creating the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, long motion, and second by Commissioner Bernarding. And any further discussion? All right, Mary, it's time to vote.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Bernard?
Aye.
Chair Ludlow?
Aye. Passes 5-0. Again, thank you, gentlemen. And now the second public hearing, Mr. Krupp.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing to consider the proposed Housing and Community Development 2016 Action Plan, and we have Mr. Kevin Coe, staff with our Community Development Office here to discuss this with you. My understanding is we're not here to take action on this item today, but to plan to schedule it for future action on an agenda in May, I believe May 5th. So, Mr. Coe?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Ludlow. I'm Kevin Coe. I'm the Housing and Community Development Manager, and I'm working under Chuck Robbins, and I'm sitting in for him today. So I'm here to present the Draft Housing and Community Development Action Plan and to request a public hearing to take comments on the plan. The board does not need to take any action today, as mentioned earlier. The plan was published for public comment on March 23rd, and the 30-day comment period will close on April 25th. After the comment period, staff will finalize the plan, incorporate public comments, and present the plan to the board at its May 5th meeting, and at which time we will request the board approve the plan so that we may submit it to HUD by the May 15th deadline. There are three elements to the public hearing. The first is a really brief summary of what we did this past fiscal year with the HUD funds. We're going to review some of the projects of the new action plan that's before you today, and then we're going to open the public hearing to give the citizens opportunity to comment on the action plan. You know, at this time, I'd really like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the work of Mark Zaroy. He's one of my staff. He's the one that pulled this action plan together and really shepherded it through the public process. It was a pretty big undertaking, and he just did an excellent job with it. So thanks, Mark. Just a little general process information. The county is an entitlement community and receives CDBG, home, and ESG funds from HUD as an annual allocation. In other words, we don't have to compete for these funds. We're entitled to it so long as we meet the requirements of the grant. This year, we will be receiving about $2,019,000 in CDBG funds, about $746,000 in home funds, and close to $180,000 in ESG funds. ESG stands for Emergency Solutions Grant. The county partners through IGAs with this many cities so that we can include their population in our county population for the purposes of grant funding. And the annual action plan amends the 5-year consolidated plan, and this is the 5th and final year of the 5-year consolidated plan. We're going to plan to open our 2017, 2018, and 2019 funding cycle in November. Again, the county goes through a 3-year cycle and then another 2-year cycle. The next upcoming cycle is a 3-year cycle that we hope to open in November. A real brief summary about what we did last year. We expended about $1.7 million of CDBG funds to develop and improve community facilities, improve public infrastructure, and provide housing rehabilitation programs and support public services. We completed about 30 housing rehabilitation projects. We spent about $300,000 for public services that helped over 5,000 Clackamas County residents. And CDBG generated about $1.1 million of match from our partner agencies. In home, we completed the Ecoiso Terrace, which is a 34-unit senior housing project. We are nearing completion of the Central City Concern Town Center Courtyard project right near Town Center. And home leveraged about $14 million of outside investment in our housing projects. And the Emergency Solutions Grant, we allocated about $166,000 to help agencies provide shelter and needed services to highly vulnerable populations throughout the county. So I want to talk about this year's action plan and kind of highlights just a few key projects that I think the commissioners would be interested in. The annual action plan is kind of like the yearbook to the encyclopedia. You know, when you get the encyclopedia, you get that big volume, and then each year you get that yearbook. That's what the action plan is. It amends the consolidated plan. We're going to be getting about $2 million. It's actually a little over $2 million in CDBG funds. And some of the projects we're going to do street improvements in Canby. We're planning to do some work in Colton for the food project. One key project that I want to bring to your attention is we're carrying over about $68,000 as seed money for the tiny house demonstration project. There is considerable county interest in tiny houses, and you know, as a means to address homelessness and the lack of affordable housing in the county. The difficulty we've had has been in identifying a suitable site that is near services and transportation and has access to the necessary public infrastructure. Our department, HPS, has enlisted the services of Colliers International, which is a commercial real estate firm, to help us locate sites, both for tiny houses location and for general affordable housing. New in this action plan this year, you'll see something called the Optional Emergency Relocation Fund. This fund was established as a result of the experience we've had with the Oregon City landslide this past December. If you recall, there are a couple of apartment complexes that were sliding down the hill, and we wanted to use HUD funds to help these people relocate to new housing. Because of the process that HUD needs, we have to go through a 30-day comment period before we can even consider a new HUD-funded project. It created a delay in our ability to provide funding for the people that really needed it. HUD did allow us to go through a waiver process, which cut the timeline by about 13 days. But by putting this project in the action plan this year, we have the 30-day comment period ahead of time, and so if something happens, fire, a landslide, flood, we can react immediately with federal funds, you know, once the commissioners approve that use of the funds. And so we take that delay out of it. So I think it's a real important thing for you to note, and we hope to carry it through for each action plan from here on in. So in home funds, we're going to be getting $746,000 of home, which is about a 6% increase from last year. We have a real nice project in Molalla called Rondel Court. We're going to be turning that 30-unit complex into 47 units by demolishing 10 units that are in distressed condition and building 27 new units there. We're also going to be providing down payment assistance through our CHAP program, which is the Clackamas Home Buyer Assistance Program, and tenant-based rental assistance for people that are near or at homelessness to help them get back into rental housing. For Emergency Solutions Grant, we're getting $180,000, which is just about even from where we were last year. And I also wanted to mention that we're getting about $1.5 million for the Continuum of Care Fund, which was a competitive process. We competed and we were awarded $1.5 million. We're still waiting for the Tier 2 projects to be announced, and we're also waiting for the bonus project to be announced. The bonus project includes a veterans, what we want to call Housing Our Heroes. It's a veteran homeless housing project that will really help our social service division expand services to homeless vets. And that's about all I have, and I'd be more than happy to answer questions for you.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you for your presentation. Mr. Coe, I have a couple of questions. You know, the competition is great for these grants, and could you mention the public process that was engaged? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, so there's a 3-year process and a 2-year process that combines for the 5-year consolidated plan. So in November of 2017, we expect to have a public hearing and a public process for applications to apply for CDBG funds, ESG funds, and home funds for the next 3 years. It's open to all public agencies. We've had Northwest Housing Alternatives come in for funding. Caritas Housing came in for funding, so we have our own social services is funded through that RFP program.
Thank you. You know, in my experience with this is when I'm out in the community and people come up to me, well, you know, how do I apply for one of these grants? And by that time, the 2- and 3-year process is already passed, and they find out about them later. Right. And then I have to explain the process to them, which is kind of cumbersome in a way, but I'm sure staff has tried to, you know, be real receptive to that. Now, is the money that we're getting from this the same as we had in the last 2 years?
We're getting a slight increase in home, a slight increase in CDBG, and about $1,000 decrease in ESG.
Overall,
so, yeah,
overall.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's pretty good. And the Rondel Court apartment complex in Malala, you're going to tear down some units. What are you going to do with the displaced tenants?
And we've been working with Caritas Housing, who is the developer for the project and the owner of the current Rondel Court. They have relocation plan that is not actually funded by city funds, or county funds. It is funded by agency funds, and they're going to be relocating those people temporarily into other units, either at Rondel Court or in some of their other housing.
In Malala?
Hopefully in Malala.
Yeah, because there are many new apartments being built in Malala. Holy cow. There's just apartment city anymore out there. Yeah, it's an infill process where they have not expanded their urban growth boundary, but hey, whatever they want to do. Well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard.
Well, I wanted to mention a couple items in here. One is the Annie Ross House. You know, the previous city council did not embrace this project. I assume that they are now. Have you talked to some of them? Annie Ross House is a homeless shelter in Milwaukee, across from Milwaukee, I guess it's okay to say where it is, across from Milwaukee High School. They do a plant sale every year, so be sure to buy some plants. They've just been a great partner in the city of Milwaukee, and you know, my business is not far from there. I've never, ever had an issue. Most of the time, these are mothers with kids and families that are going through a process to start their lives over, and I'm really excited to see Annie Ross getting that kind of money to move forward. The tiny house thing, you know, we've been talking about it a while. I think, you know, the thing about tiny house, I don't think it's appropriate to consider that for veterans so much. I think I'd like to look for a better opportunity for veterans, and maybe that is providing some incentives for builders to build affordable housing for veterans in Clackamas County. And I know there are people working on doing exactly that. Also, Jennings Lodge, $251,000 to do some improvements. North Clackamas, sewer hookup program, which is an urban renewal district that septic tanks have been failing for years. This gives people a little help when their septic fails and they need to hook up to the sewer system. I think that's very important. That's been a very successful project and has actually provided some economic development opportunities in that area, so I'm really excited about that. I know somebody who's building a brand-new home over there, when a few years ago you wouldn't even drive through there. So things have gotten a lot better. So I'm excited about all these projects, and they are spread throughout the county. And it also kind of reminds me of our grant program, which we try to do similar things. You know, because all these communities, we sometimes supplement even these dollars to get a project completed. So I'm excited about the work you guys have done to spread this out throughout the county.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, this is always very refreshing and rewarding in a sense that we're able to do something and do some projects, and these are all typically low-income situations, and so there's a criteria that develops that. So I concur with Commissioner Bernard on this as well. I did want to make sure on page 8 with the bar graphs, the colored bar graphs, I just want to ensure that the total there of, this is a 3-year program. So as I look at the bar graphs, regardless, like for example, 2014, it shows 405,000 urban and 160,000 rural. And one would think that maybe it would total to, in that case, 565,000. But actually, those are what's spread out through the 3-year cycle.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's the aggregate of the 3 years assembled, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. But I did want to point out that whether it's the graph at the top that separates out the city versus the unincorporated, or whether it's the rural versus the urban. Seems to be a few disparities in that the unincorporated and or the rural seem to be a little bit less expenditures in total. Is that correct, or is it actually balanced? I can't do the math here altogether, but it just appears as though that maybe there's less advocacy in some of these unincorporated areas, or less projects or focus.
Well, and I wouldn't say there's less advocacy, but the way the CDBG funds come to the county, they come to the county partly because of the participation of the cities in our process. In other words, the city of Oregon City, the city of Happy Valley, they allow us to count their populations when HUD does their calculation for CDBG and home funds. And so because of that, we feel an obligation that when the cities have viable projects, that we allow them to compete for these funding. And so I wouldn't say that there's less advocacy in the unincorporated areas, but we do feel a need to ensure that our city partners get a piece of the pie.
Yeah, I only bring that up because half the population in the county is unincorporated, and the other half of the county, or you can look at the county differently and say half the county is rural as well. So I kind of want to somewhat ensure that there's equity in some of those projects. And the one that Commissioner Bernard pointed out on the Jenny's Lodge thing, that was an opportunity. Actually, that's about a $2 million or $1.5 million project. So we were able to leverage some RFFA monies, I believe, MTIP monies for that. So this is the filling the gap there in total. So, and there are some projects in here for safe routes. Well, they're not really categorized as safe routes to schools, but essentially that's what they are. And this morning, before I got here, I actually met with a lady who's concerned about a safe route to school in Milwaukee, Linwood, and we met on site and kind of looked at the area out over there. And so there are some projects that help in that, and we've done that in the past. Just want to point out that we do a lot actually with this. We probably do more with community development block grants for those situations than we do with the regional table. So that's why this is so important, and I was sharing that with that this morning. So thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard?
I just want to add, you know, there's a big difference we try to safe routes to school. Where the population is more dense, you obviously have more kids walking to school. When you work with homeless shelters, you have to make sure they're near transit. And there's certainly less opportunity in our rural communities for transit sites, but and sewer hookups. There are often less sewers out in rural communities, so it's probably more of a population density versus the larger unincorporated area. But it does, if you look at the previous year, 2015, just a substantial amount of money went to the urban or unincorporated urban areas versus our rural communities. And I remember one specific project along, I think it was 213, I'm trying to remember what highway it was along, which was near a grocery store or a market that was really challenging to even walk by. And we looked at it in our transportation plan, and it didn't get funded, and we did fund it here, and I think we even funded it maybe in our grant program a little bit. So that project ended up getting done. It just took a lot of different sources. None of these projects are fully funded. They're just a culmination of sources that finally, I'm sure the Annie Ross House is not just this amount. It's probably a lot more than this amount. And they have to probably get 10 grant sources to finally complete the project, as many of our projects do require many, many partners.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I just want to build on that. Estacada is probably not, I'm sure Estacada could use some of that, but they're in better shape than, let's say, Colton or on Wall Street where the school is, or in Malala, inside or outside the boundaries. But you're right, we need to get some money for some work, but there's a lot of gaps there where it's extremely dangerous, even today along 211, and there's still big culverts, and between the fog line and the culvert, it's awfully narrow and it's extremely dangerous. So that area between along 213 and 211 is it's just going to take a lot of patchwork of money, if you will, to get that. But we just did little bits, and there's just still we're not anywhere near complete.
Yeah, when you're putting up campaign signs, you really notice that, don't you?
Who's
Well,
campaigning?
For those who want to use the right of way exclusively, I imagine that might want to see those firsthand.
Affordable housing, unfortunately, is not affordable to build. You take Town Center Greens, which we participated in, 60 units at $250,000 a unit. And it's got to be a hybrid, an in-between tiny houses and that kind of expense, because we cannot continue to sustain that kind of spending because it doesn't affect enough people. So I appreciate the partnerships. I have no criticism for the way the money's been invested, but we have to find a hybrid model and certainly I appreciate the money being put towards tiny houses. As a real estate broker, the three elements of value are location, location, and location. And the concern is that no matter where you put these, there's going to be probably a complaint. Now, we went to Thurston County here a couple months ago, the home of our Mr. Don Krupp, and we were seeing the jail. And the jail is kind of up in an industrial area as well. And we turned the corner, and Mr. Krupp wanted to show us the fact that there are tiny houses there in an industrial area. Now, there's a few people that would complain, but even the industrial people said, hey, now what are we doing here? And it turned out there is no problem at all. It's a great facility. There's no problems. There's many qualifications to get in there. There's a central pavilion, I'll call it, with washer, dryer, refrigerator, et cetera, and all the plumbing. And otherwise, these houses are self-contained except for they don't have water and sewer. But it's right next door, and evidently it's been a tremendous success. So we have to look at all opportunities, not just residential, because the cost of the dirt is so much for multifamily and commercial and industrial that we've got to look at other avenues, and we are exploring those currently. Commissioner Schrader.
So I did have a question about the expense of this, because my understanding is that there are significant HUD requirements that we have to adhere to
Yes.
when we take HUD money, and that is one of the cost drivers, as I understand it, is because you have to have, for example, they're higher standards sometimes.
Oh,
And then,
um,
so could you
yes.
just elaborate on that a little?
Sure.
bit?
For instance, the Town Center Greens project, the environmental review, I mean, it's right in the middle of an urban setting. You would think that we wouldn't have to worry about fish and wildlife and those type of things. But the review that our staff did to appease NOAA and to ensure that stormwater is treated on site and that the noise traffic isn't affecting the residents. And there's a lot of work going into that if it was a private developer, they wouldn't have to consider. There's things like the quality of build. We have to ensure, because it's home funded, that the systems that are put in place last what they call the life of the period of affordability, which is 20 years. So you have to ensure that HVAC units, water heaters, everything there is going to last that full amount. Otherwise, you have to have ensure that there's a replacement reserve adequate to replace that. Otherwise, HUD won't allow us to fund those things.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that we're dealing with. And when you say that we need to think outside of the box with tiny houses and things of that sort, it's more of the notion that it's good, decent housing, but it isn't necessarily funded by the HUD funding stream. And HUD has put on, I think, an additional, we actually testified about this at the National Association of Counties. They've put another layer where we have to do a regional coordination with everybody. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
You know, I don't know a
Chuck
lot
knows
about that, but
yeah.
I could certainly find out for you.
But it really adds a whole nother layer of expense and coordination that we have not been absolutely required to do. And the pushback at the national level is, if HUD is going to require us to do that, we need to get the additional dollars to do it, because once again, our concern is it's an unfunded mandate. So,
Thank you.
there we go.
Thank you. Well, this is a public hearing, and I'm going to open the public hearing, and we have some cards up here. They are Melissa Earlbaum and David, I'm sorry, David.
You're out in the hall.
Nepes?
Neeple.
Nepes.
Neeple.
Nepal. Man, you print as bad as I do. Okay. Either one of you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Melissa Earlbaum. I'm the Executive Director for Clackamas Women's Services, and I'm here to express our support for the plan that your Community Development Office has put together, and also to thank your Community Development Office and your Social Service Office for being so willing to listen to citizens and to listen to the programs and advocacy programs that are in the community when we express what needs we have for the vulnerable populations we're serving. They're always very accessible and very responsive. And I just wanted to point out that in this particular plan, there's some funding that's going towards the Clackamas Women's Services Shelter, and we've had other projects that have been supported in the plan in the past. And I just want to continue to express the importance of providing emergency shelter and housing options for survivors. Nobody should have to face the decision between a bed to sleep in, living on the street, a roof over one's head, or being assaulted under that roof. And oftentimes, domestic violence survivors are forced into homelessness because they have to make those choices. We need to make sure that we have those critical safety net resources, emergency shelter, transitional housing, homeless prevention, resources for domestic and sexual violence survivors throughout the county. I've seen the county be very committed to this issue, and I just want to express gratitude for that, and also enthusiasm for your continued support.
Thank you. And may I just point out the current project being helped out by the home builders is very exciting, and I'm glad that it's finally being processed through a little faster than what it was going. I'm looking forward to a lot better situation there than what you currently have. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is David Niebel. I live in the Fishers Mill area, and I'm on the board of Clackamas Women's Services. I want to provide a little bit of context for what Melissa just said. In Oregon, over 12,000 requests for emergency housing for domestic violence victims are made to the network every year, to the domestic violence network every year. And in Clackamas County, Clackamas Women's Services receives 2,000 requests for emergency assistance. And unfortunately, Clackamas Women's Services is able to house only 140 women and children every year. So the demand just outpaces supply immensely. Domestic violence in Clackamas County is one of the top reasons for families becoming homeless. And as Melissa said, often the families are faced with a Hobson's choice of choosing between homelessness and continued abuse in the household where they're living in. Survivors are often isolated from support systems that could help them out and from financial resources by their abusers. And this also is a factor that leads to families becoming homeless and domestic violence victims specifically becoming homeless. Emergency shelter, homeless prevention support, and transitional housing are life-saving services for this population. And a strong investment in affordable housing is crucial to them so that a family or a woman who's fleeing domestic violence is able to leave the shelter system, if they're lucky enough to get in, as quickly as possible without returning to their abuser. So this is a crucial need, and we applaud the efforts of the county to address it in whatever way they can. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, the next two are Michelle Vinker and Angela Trimble.
Hello, I'm Michelle Vinker, and I am here on 3 accounts. I am the Executive Director for the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Clackamas County, or NAMI Clackamas. I am also a resident of rural Clackamas County, out east of Sandy. And finally, I'm the mother of a child, an adult child with a severe and persistent mental illness who is currently homeless. So I want to just start by thanking the board for the things that you have funded, because you have put some effort and some funding into it, including those Clackamas Greens apartments, which we're really excited to have open soon. But I want to also bring your attention to the continued need. Some research shows that as many as 72% of all homeless people have either a severe or serious mental illness. Using the latest Clackamas County homeless count, that means approximately 1,581 people in Clackamas County are homeless with a severe and persistent mental illness. And that doesn't include a crisis that I can see coming, where there are a lot of people that are being housed right now by family members because there's no place else, and those family members are aging and they're worried about where their loved one is going to live afterwards. It's one of the top 3 causes of homelessness in the U.S., and the highest percentages of mentally ill and homeless are women and the chronically homeless. The National Coalition for Homelessness states that, contrary to popular belief, many of these homeless people with mental illness are willing to accept services, but they are more likely to recover and achieve housing stability if they have access to supported housing. Mental health housing also saves money elsewhere. 63 to 90% of lifetime arrests are with people with serious mental illnesses. Appropriate, affordable housing can save money in our jails. And I have a story I want to tell you that recently, I've heard these numbers, I have heard people talk about it, but it's all been this somewhere else. But I actually had a young man who told me recently, who is currently homeless, but being helped and supported in a hotel while he's waiting, by Clackamas County, while he's waiting for something to come open. He told me if he ended up homeless again, he's trying to stay clean and sober. He says, there's no way on the street I can stay clean and sober. He says, so I will do something, anything, to either end me up in the hospital or in the jail, because there I can stay clean and sober. I can't on the streets. So that's what would happen to our money. Our emergency rooms are also overwhelmed with people with mental illnesses. Many of these have comorbid addiction and physical health problems. There, I'd like to talk to my daughter, who is also homeless right now, but luckily being able to stay in a motel in Gladstone for the time being while she's waiting. She also has epilepsy. If she became truly homeless on the street, there is no way that she'd be able to maintain those drugs that she needs to keep from having seizures, take them regularly, keep them safe from being stolen. When she does not have her medications, she ends up in the emergency room 2 to 3 times a week because of epileptic seizures. So having
Go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
There's RFPs coming this spring. I wanted to encourage you to take advantage of some of the monies from the cigarette tax that will be coming out, but it will need some extra money from the county. I want to thank you for what you've done so far, but it's not enough. We need to do more. We need to find a way somehow to bring more affordable housing for people with severe and serious mental illnesses, persistent mental illnesses in Clackamas County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Angela Trimble, and I'm representing Northwest Housing Alternatives, our home-based program. I also brought Stephen McMurtry, our housing director, development director, is with us also. We are here to say thank you for all of the commitment and the different funding sources that we have received, the ESG for the Annie Ross House, and some of that has gone to home base, the CDBG or CSBG monies. We're here to say thank you, and I also wanted to provide you some stats of what that money did in 2015. We don't always get to see that, so I thought that might be kind of nice. This is our home-based program, and in 2015, I'm sorry, we served 195 households, and 70% of those were children. We have served 18% of those were Hispanic, and 274 of the 535 were children. 74% of those adults were reporting domestic violence, and then 20% were reporting a disability, and 9 were veterans. The people who left the program, 71% of them went into permanent housing. So this fund is serving prevention and rapid rehousing dollars. I wanted to say that. 69% of those who retained, so of the 263 adults that entered, 69% either retained or increased their income. The average increase in income, if they had it at entry, was $1,199.66, and if they had no income, they had an average of $811. I've provided kind of the breakdown of ethnicities and races, and then I also provided the follow-ups in regards to, we do a 3, 6, and 12-month follow-up as far as if they are continued to be stably housed. And as you can see, if they went into permanent placement at 3 months, they were 94% were still housed. At 6 months, it was 100% was still housed, and at 12 months, it was 94% still housed. And our eviction prevention stats, we have at 3 months, they are 89% still housed, 6 months, 86%, and at 12 months, 82%. I just want to be able to share some statistics so that you know that your monies are doing some excellent work. We did get our campus redesign plan passed by the city planners in Milwaukee, and we are so excited to be moving forward on the Opportunity Center, I think is what we're calling it. Where we will be increasing the size of the Annie Ross House to serve now 8 families and being able to put 28 units of affordable housing on that site. So we are very excited, and we appreciate so much your commitment and continued support. So thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
I have questions for both of you, so don't leave. Angela Turnbull, yes, I've been to the Annie Ross House several times, and I appreciate what you do out there. You know, I'm trying to understand this statistic under your income. It said those people that had income at entry, they increased their income almost $1,200 a month or a year?
Yes.
A month. They increased it an additional $1,200?
We're doing monthly incomes.
Okay, my question is this.
Right.
Okay. This is how it reads. Of those people that had income at entry, they increased their income on an average of $1,200 a month. Is that what that says?
I think it is a year.
Okay, because that would be quite
something.
I want to know what great work program you have out there for these people. Because I'll sign up.
Yeah, but I appreciate you're bringing this to my attention so that I can be more clear and actually, because it does. Although we put in the stats at a month, it does calculate it to a year. So
Okay.
thank you.
Well, thank you
for bringing that to my
everything you do.
attention.
Yeah, and Michelle, I want to go back to you. You know, I had a town hall in Sandy about a year ago. Did you attend that?
I did.
Because you're very familiar and your story is very familiar to me. And I appreciate you come and you say, 72% of the of the homeless you think are mental health. And what statistic or what report do you cite that from?
I will have to. I know that I got some of them.
And it may be very true. I'm not
I know,
challenging it.
I will get that for you because I did not write that down. I know that I got the National Coalition for Homelessness stats for some of the others. That one I particularly.
And I wanted to know if that's true generally in our Clackamas County area. I do agree.
I think it'd be harder to show around Clackamas County just because we usually don't do those kinds of surveys to know that. But I do. It's on a national.
Okay, that's good enough. Yeah, mental health really is one of the reasons why I went into public service, ran for office 16 years ago. And it's prevalent in my family, and nobody goes unaffected in today's society by this. And, I think something that this board really needs to do is sit down and get serious about the need for supported housing, especially mental health services. I'm not sure how to do that, but I think that's something that we need to be looking forward to as we, there's this big rush for, housing is so expensive and so expensive. Well, the mental health problem is very expensive, and there's people, like you say, living on the streets. The mental health issue is tricky, however, because you just can't take an adult and say, well, you need mental health, we're going to put you over here, we're going to make you take your medicine. You cannot do that. So I think there is a bigger solution out there, and we just haven't taken the time to try to figure out what that is. So I might consider it, this summer when our other initiatives are on their way, to start taking a look at what we can do for supported housing on this area. Because we've given a lot of attention to transitional housing. We have this wonderful program for that. We have, disabilities, we have senior housing and all of this. So maybe it's time that we really try to figure this out.
Well, and the National Coalition for Homelessness, like I said, found that people really are willing most of the time to get treatment and to get help if it's provided and they are housed. But it's really hard to provide treatment and expect people to get to appointments or to be somewhere where someone can meet with them when they are homeless. And you can look at Utah too, and I think probably most of you know that, who put a Housing First initiative. So they worried about getting people housed first,
Right.
and then found that many of them then were willing to go into treatment for addictions, for mental health. Not everyone's ever going to. But if you can get housing, that provides that first level of stability.
Yeah, and that brings me to another point. It kind of is, if we're going to be building new housing, why shouldn't all of our housing be supported housing at some degree or another, at least for the initial evaluation? I mean, all of our housing should be that way, because the people who need housing do have special needs, do have a reason why they need housing. And I think maybe that should be whether they are out of a job, help them get into workforce development like Martha's so involved in, because we have one of these wonderful county services. So maybe we need to start looking at this differently and reaching a wider breadth of solutions out there that are already working.
Commissioner Smith, I'd like to speak up on this a little bit. We have a contract with the state to help provide a subsidy to folks that have a severe and persistent mental illness that is connected with Cascadia, Clackamas County Behavioral Health, and with LifeWorks. And it's been my experience that the vision of that grant was about recovery and trying to help and believe that people can recover from mental illness. What I'm finding, we hold in our office the housing specialist that helps the mental health agencies try to get this person into housing. The idea was whether that first person wanted to choose to be engaged in treatment or not, we need to have sufficient supports to and continue to develop a relationship with them to support the landlords that are housing them, and that both Cascadia and LifeWorks, our mental health system is so inundated with people that they don't have enough support to be able to take on what, let alone the housing issue. So it's the spirit and the hopes and dreams that we have as a system to do what's right, and then there's the reality of what's happening out there, that the need and the demand is so great. They're just like, hey, we've got this person, let's just get him into housing. And yet the other things are not in place. It is very complicated, and it is all of our clients that we serve have some level of mental health. They're being affected by the distress that they're dealing with in their lives, some of them more severe, obviously, than others. And how can we all understand that we're not any different. We are all the same. We have maybe more supports in place and are more connected to our communities where we're not maybe going to the other side of a mental health crisis at this, but we are all still the same. We all still need the same basic, shelter, food, clothing, and just people who care and feeling a part of something and being engaged in something productive.
And I do agree wholeheartedly that mental illness, many of the illnesses are treatable, maybe not totally curable, but at least to get on with life and become a productive citizen. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Michelle, your comments about the roof over your head first are reminiscent of Cindy Becker. That's what she always said,
Yes.
is that you start with that stability, and from there can be recovery. In our jails and our prisons, there's a darn good estimate that 60% of those people are going through addiction recovery or have mental illness or both. Commissioner Bernard.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things is that 71% of those who left those housing units actually moved into permanent housing, and a large percentage also increased the money they make. I mean, you got to start somewhere. But I listened to a report on NPR the other day where they talked to people along the Springwater Trail, and boy, I thought it was the most complicated. This is probably the most complicated issue we face for a long time, because there are a lot of people who don't move into housing because they don't like rules. And boy, I mean, life is full of rules, and I don't know how you move those folks into housing and suggest that there's no rules. You can do what you want, because there's an investment that the public makes that needs to be protected right off. And then there are families out there that might be in that same housing, and you just, it is, I was just scratching my head.
What hair?
I had a full head of hair until I heard that interview. But it is really, you're right, probably the most challenging issue we face for the next generation. My brother, I mentioned to John earlier, my brother lives in Nantucket, and one of his neighbors works with a bunch of investors. They own 700,000 apartments across the country, and they're just buying them up like crazy. Remodeling them, kicking people out, remodeling them, raising the rent, and that's just perpetuating a terrible problem. And this is not just Metro, it's Wilsonville, it's certainly San Francisco, it's everywhere. And somehow we've got to find a solution. And there's been a lot of talk about rents, freezing rents. And the legislature in the last session passed a bill that required more notification. And we had a gentleman testify one day that probably by the end of the week, he and his daughter were going to be homeless. So it is a huge problem, and we have lots of opportunity in Clackamas County, which will require an investment, acreage that is underutilized. So I look forward to this discussion, and it's huge.
I don't, I'm working on my 10th year at Northwest Housing Alternatives, and when I started, I don't remember how we moved people out of the shelter. I honestly have no idea how it happened. And we thought then, if we only had a little bit of money, we could move them into housing, right? And back then, we didn't provide supportive services in the community. And now look where we are. We have money. We have some supportive services in the community. Now we have no housing. And even if we did, even if we got them in the door of the unit, they can't sustain those rents. I don't think I can sustain those rents. I mean, I'm worried about my staff. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do about what we're dealing with right now. We now have money and we have some supports and we can get them in the door, but then what? How long do we support them? I don't know those answers, but thank you.
Commissioner Bernard, can I really quickly address when you were talking about following those rules? Some of that, again, is having those supports available and realizing that recovery also means that you can backslide. So one particular gentleman I know who is currently homeless, he did really, really well at Shea Me, which is mental health housing that actually has some addiction supports. when he backslid, they got him into some support groups and some addiction treatment, and he would come back. He left Chez Ami because he had an opportunity to go from a studio apartment to the HUD housing across from our office there in Milwaukee. We give him a little bit more room, and he thought he'd been clean and sober for quite some time and thought that he'd be okay. He's also schizophrenic, and when his schizophrenia gets the worst of him and he gets feeling very depressed, he sometimes turns to drugs and alcohol. In HUD housing, with all those extra things, the minute you do certain drugs, you're out of there. You don't get a chance to say, I'm going to go back into treatment. I'm going to try again. I'm going to make that, which is all that part of addiction and mental health. So he's ended up homeless. If we can provide those supports, if we can realize that sometimes a person might backslide, but that's okay if they're willing to then start going forward again, then I think we could address some of those, what we term the lack of wanting to follow rules when maybe it's just part of the illness itself.
Commissioner Savas.
Well, I really appreciate your hard work, and you spoke about this, and you're sharing your compassion, and you understand this issue, and the previous speakers as well. I just want to say, give you some encouragement. I know this is so daunting because the cost is going up, and I know that we want to make ground all the time, and it just, right now, with this price of housing going up, no-cause evictions, it's exacerbating, and it's making it even more daunting. But we'll find. We want to fix it. We want to fix it, but I just want to offer you some encouragement that we're behind you, and we're trying to educate people about this problem. A lot of people don't realize this, what we're facing, and how we do this and how we get housing actually affordable, and to hear that people are buying up housing for profit and raising the rents and exacerbating the problem is just shameful in a sense. I understand profit motives and so forth, but we've got to find a problem. We got to find a solution to this problem, and I know that we're working statewide at this, at the AOC and other situations, but I just want to acknowledge that we hear you loud and clear, encourage you to keep fighting, and we're doing our best we can. And educating us is very helpful. So what you provided us is extremely valuable, because I don't think a lot of elected people understand all the things that you see on the ground in your day-to-day operations, and making those available to us and sharing that is extremely important. So thank you.
Thank you for your
Commissioner Schrader.
And just one last quick comment. Our Association of Oregon Counties survey has just gone out to all the counties where we're doing a snapshot of housing needs across the state, because we're finding that there's some significant differences between urban and rural opportunities and how you provide services there. So that is in process, and it's going to be a county-driven statewide process so we can affect legislation at the local level and the federal level here.
The last time I visited the Annie Ross house, I was the same fat guy, but I had white hair, white beard, and a red suit on, and it was great fun, by the way. So anyway, thank you very much. We have two more cards here. They are Paul Igger and Jan Lindstrom.
County Chair, Commissioners, thank you, John, for your comments about what you saw on that tiny houses in a commercial area. You know, just the whole idea. We have to have a real open workshop, creative thinking. We need, this can't be top down. It's got to be bottom up. We've got to get a lot more creativity into the whole process. You know, it's like sitting there for month after month after month working on the systems transportation plan and listening to all sorts of people, the invaluable input from these people that came before us. But there are a lot of people like myself that have been pressing the issue of veterans, homeless veterans, people with PTSD, that are sleeping under tarps. The good ones, the successful ones, may have a pup tent, but they don't communicate well, and they don't want to take a lot of orders. They don't trust government. And so what we're trying to do is, what we have to do is get more people thinking together, and it shouldn't be just from the head shed. It's got to be a lot of caring people who have it in their heart that we want to find a solution to this. And that's one of the reasons why I have pressed the whole idea of tiny houses as transition housing, not permanent housing. But it's a place where they can have a roof over their head. And much like they can have a central commissary, a wash area, and all of these things where we can do it, but we can have the initial steps of cataloging and trying to understand them and trying to move them from that initial area to the next area. And we've got to start working on plans. How do we create long-term transitional planning to take people from the beginning embryo areas of total homelessness, mental illness, whatever it may be, and start figuring out how we're going to create the layer-by-layer approach that will move them to maybe a housing complex that's right next to Clackamas Community College, where we take and there's a whole area where 213 comes along right next to where Hagen's was. And there's we could put a building right there in that location. And that could be part of moving people from some transition areas to job training, where we get them up to a place. So we start creating the layers, step-by-step layers to move people to where we make them productive. And I think that's and working and contributing. But it's going to take a team, and I hope that you reach out to create a much greater discussion, open discussion with the general public, and people like myself that care.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Jan Lundstrom, Concerned Citizen. Thank you so much for addressing this issue. I do have family members struggling with this. I wanted to just mention that every time I drive down McLaughlin Boulevard, I see nothing but tiny houses. They're trailers, motorhomes, unsold vehicles that can house people. There's a possibility that those people that aren't selling them would want to donate 10% of their unsold to the housing. It wouldn't require HUD building those famous trailers from Louisiana that had toxicity and problems that are already pre-approved by. I'm just offering that up as a potential solution. It seems like it could be something. I want to support the idea of recovery, coming from a place of recovery myself. If people are not sober, they will never make it anywhere. That is the basis, housing and recovery. So what are we doing for recovery? I read a horrifying article in the Oregonian about a heroin addict who died under medical care in a jail in Washington County, and that was absolutely terrifying to me. We have a huge heroin crisis in Oregon. I don't know what it looks like in the county, but I think if we don't address any kind of intake and recovery and, recovery houses. I used to be on the board of a sober living for women in Los Angeles. It was extremely effective to have those kind of places, not all isolated, but mixed in with the general population and run very effectively in a network. So I would encourage just the housing people to work with the recovery people and on some kind of system that is effective for that and could be very helpful. Also, I know rent control is anathema to a lot of people. I was a landlord. We had rent control. We sold our building. We paid $5,000 to relocate our tenant. He found housing. There needs to be, in my mind, with these no-cause evictions, not only, okay, we're giving you 90 days, but if you're going to come in and take over apartment buildings and you're in Texas or wherever you're coming in from, California, and you're buying up all these properties and you're kicking people out, and, well, what are you doing for the community, and why are we letting you do this, and why aren't we forcing you to pay relocation funds, or at least paying into some fund for the county that helps us relocate people? So that would be one thing. And then also I have a little tiny apartment in my house that isn't legal yet, and it's kind of a mother-in-law unit. And I think encouraging and helping citizens to understand how to make ADUs and these apartments in their own houses would be a great thing, because I think we have a little bit of a low ceiling. We don't know how to go about getting it, fixed so it can be a rental unit. And I think, isolating a lot of people with problems in an area makes all of them work together on problems, kind of like people in jails get worse. And so I'm for, multi-housing, that, maybe some people have issues and the rest of them are healthy and they work together to get better. And I would encourage you to look at those kind of solutions as well.
Good ideas. Thank you. Thank you both. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and announce there will be no board action on this item today. This item will come back for approval on the May 5th business meeting agenda. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. We have a revised consent agenda before us that we added one item to, and that's item B as in, no, E as in E1. And so I'll ask the clerk to read the consent agenda, including the added item by title.
Okay, the consent agenda. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, approval of a contract with Clackamas Children's Commission, Inc. for healthy family screening and home visiting services for high-risk families. Approval of a home loan agreement with Fenton Rondel Court LP for the Rondel Court Apartment Project. Under the Transportation and Development, we have approval of Amendment Number 1 to the Intergovernmental Agreement with Metro for the Clackamas Regional Center Area Performance Measures and Multimodal Area Project. Under Elected Officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. Under Community Corrections, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County Community Corrections and Clackamas County College to provide GED instructional services, and acceptance of a grant award from CARE Oregon to help fund the creation of a community garden to supply healthy food baskets for clients of the Transition Center. Under our Finance Department, and this is the item that we added, a resolution approving the submission of the assessor's CAFA grant application for fiscal year 2016-2017. And under Water Environment Services, approval of the intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County Service District Number 1 and the City of West Lynn for the environmental lab services. And that concludes the consent agenda.
All right, Commissioners, you want to remove any of those items before we decide on them? I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further discussion? Mary?
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Bernard?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Chair Ludlow?
Aye, passes 5-0. It's time for the County Administrator update.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I have a couple of items of good news to share with you. One is, of course, we're in the second full week of National County Government Month, and this week's theme is health and hospitals. And to that end, I have a quick note about our Health, Housing, and Human Services Department. Earlier this month, the Public Health Division celebrated National Public Health Week, and our employees highlighted local health achievements and sought to inspire and improve the general wellness of our community. We had some 38 staff members from some 20 divisions and departments taking place in contests that were aimed at promoting balanced, safe, and nourishing lives. So thanks very much to our H3S staff for organizing and inspiring in the community. And then last week, of course, we had that beautiful weather last week. I wish we could have the same this week, but it was especially good weather for some 62nd and 3rd graders from Welch's Elementary School who did take part in a field trip. They went up to the Hoodland Wastewater Treatment Plant to learn about wastewater treatment. And so my understanding is they had quite a bit of fun learning about what it takes to clean up our water and keep our environment clean and take care of our homes and our neighborhood. So I also wanted to let you know that for the past 2 weeks, I have just finished doing what is the annual review with all 21 county offices and departments for their respective budget proposals. We will be following up over the course of the next several weeks taking that information and consolidating that into what will be a proposal from your county administrator for the fiscal year 2016-17 budget that gets presented to the Budget Committee when we kick off budget deliberations in mid-May. I will be putting together for your regular business meeting for May the 12th a general budget 101 presentation like I did last year to share general public information about how we go about the process of developing and making decisions about the county's budget. So looking forward to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for Commissioner communication. We'll start with Commissioner Schrader.
Well, and I'm glad I'm first today, colleagues, because I am going to have to take a quick head out right after I say a few things. So I'll have to listen to the tape to hear your comments. In any case, let me start out. I attended the Tourism Development Council meeting this week, and we are working on the bylaws, which will eventually be brought before the Board of County Commissioners to take a look at and potentially tweak. So that was a good meeting yesterday. I also wanted to let you know, as I mentioned earlier, our local county surveys statewide for housing have gone out, and we are expecting to get most of that information back to the Association of Oregon Counties by the end of the month, where our housing group can start to assess that information. I attended a conference call of our Community Economic and Workforce Development Committee of the National Association of Counties, where we are continuing to develop our economic development platforms, our housing platforms, and our workforce platforms. In particular, we will present again another resolution concerning the unfunded mandate from HUD if they want a regional analysis, and we are going to have to expend additional work hours to make that happen as part of our overall housing approval studies. Then we want to make sure that we have the resources to make that happen, to meet their federal requirements. One of the things I wanted to mention that was in our consent agenda today that is very near and dear to my heart, and we approved a contract with Clackamas Children's Commission Incorporated for healthy families, screening and home visiting services for high-risk families. This is an excellent service. It's one of the things we do for early childhood development, and it's near and dear to my heart because when I was in England, that is a service that is provided actually to everyone. Where when you have a newborn child in the house, you have a national health worker who goes in and checks and makes sure everything is going appropriately and gets screened. And this is essentially the kind of thing that we do here to make sure with high-risk families that their parenting skills are up to snuff, and we give them that support system to make sure that kids get an early, good start in life. I'd also like to mention, and I'll probably be mentioning this in the next few weeks, that in cooperation with Clackamas Community College, it is their 50th anniversary. We are actually going to be renewing our Veterans Covenant on Monday, May 16th at 2 p.m. at Clackamas Community College, the Gregory Forum. And next go-around when I announce this, I'll make sure I have it on the overhead for everybody, but I'm inviting all our county commissioners to be there, and we are contacting folks from our military as well as veteran advocates across the county to be there. We have a 2008 covenant. We are renewing it for 2016 to continue our services to our veterans. I think that what we need to do next is let me bring up the arts and culture activities in the county. Okay, this is what's coming up this week. Lakewood Theater's Lost Treasure Connection Sail Away. It's romance aboard a cruise ship with all the classic wit and charm of Broadway's golden era. The show is presented script in hand with minimal staging, no sets, no props, free from the usual trappings of a fully staged production. It's actually Thursday and Friday, April 15th and 16th, and Saturday, April 16th. Or actually, those days aren't correct. Oh, well. Let's just say that it's going to be this weekend. 2 p.m. at Lakewood Theater Company's side door stage in Lake Oswego. Peregrine Literary Series presents Picture This in Words. Marilyn Stablin, award-winning visual artist and author, presents her work along with David Oates, who reads from the Heron Place. Celebrate National Poetry Month. Sunday, April 17th, 7 p.m. at the Holy Names Heritage Center in Lake Oswego. For more information about any event, go to the Arts Alliance website, clackamasartsalliance.org. Thank you, colleagues. If you don't mind, I'm going to
You excuse.
take a head out. Okay.
Commissioner Bernard.
Well, I just wanted to mention a couple of things, and one thing is that I think it's maybe time that we consider a community forum on homelessness. Bring some experts in to talk with us about that in the community, maybe a charrette kind of idea. I think it'd be a great idea to talk about that. The other thing is, I'm going to be really short, is one of our land use laws in Oregon basically says that if you build a new home on your farm, you have to tear down the old one unless it's you have a child or your parent living in that home. We especially what is at risk is some historic properties. So we should be looking to look at changing a land use law that would allow certainly historic buildings to stay for possible housing, rental property. I mean, what's the problem with that? You know, in the next session of the legislature. I know that there has been some talk about that. Just down the street from me, I know some folks have built a big home behind their old home, and I imagine it's probably not legal, but we'll see if that house remains there. But it certainly is an idea we ought to embrace during this period of time when housing is at such great demand. I know that I have a house on my, what used to be called a kitchen house on my farm property built over 100 years ago, that if I really want to use it for somebody to rent or something, I can't. I can't do that. So got to figure out a different way to resolve that problem, provide additional housing that rather than tear down historic properties. So I think that's something we ought to discuss. Other than that, we're just all really busy with campaigning and those stupid signs and all those things.
Yes,
It drives
stupid
me crazy.
signs.
And, you know, we've had some great town halls, great discussions in Oak Grove Jennings Lodge about libraries. And like John says, libraries, trees, and libraries and trees. And that challenge on the library is a good one. It's certainly not our biggest challenge, but something that I think will be resolved in short order. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had the Association of Oregon Counties monthly meeting in Salem, and I'm just going to come up with a couple of updates and gives you folks something to ponder. Interesting, we had a big transportation meeting down in Salem, and it seems now the legislature is committed to coming out with a transportation package. And I think they're doing their due diligence. I think we will have something if these 4 representatives and senators have anything to do with it. And hopefully the governor is behind it. But what I thought a little disturbing was they told us, after I mentioned that the county is going to go out for an advisory to see where our citizens feel about paying for more transportation. And they said, well, Commissioner Smith, if you, Clackamas County, do that and the city of Portland does that and they're considering something as well, it could really hurt our efforts at the legislature because any package that we could come up with might be referred by the citizens on an initiative, and they're trying to avoid that because they do know that we need more money, and they will probably have to create some type of housing remedy for that, whatever that may look like. And I said, well, at the county level, we have been waiting and waiting and waiting for the state and the federal government to do something on transportation. So we decided to take the responsibility for our own issues and problems and try to do something about it because there was a lack of movement on your part. So we'll see how that goes. Very interesting. I also you don't hear me talk about recycling much, but I know it's a big deal in the Tri-County area, as Metro is in charge of our recycling. And the recycling market is really kind of taking a hit and a nosedive, because guess what? China does not want to buy our plastic or newspapers anymore. Gee, I can't blame them. Part of the problem is that our recycling is no longer pure, in that a lot of the plastic in the cans and stuff that we recycle, glass, has contaminants on it. It's not clean and it's not separate. And so they're saying enough, enough, and that may go to how we as humans view recycling, and maybe we're not doing it quite right. So I think that's something that Metro needs to look at and redouble our education efforts to get us to do what needs to be done, because we cannot continue to fill landfills and ship it elsewhere. I mean, even shipping it to China, and they do try to recycle it, make things, and probably ship it back to us. That sounds like it's not going to happen. At our C4 committee, the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee is what that means. We had a housing discussion that I led last Thursday, and our C4 consists of elected officials from our cities, our hamlets, villages, CPOs, and really any type of community organization that wants to be involved. I think we're going to try to come up with some solutions. We identified problems. We're going to work on that again, and we have a retreat coming up in June, and I think that's going to be a big item on the retreat. And this is timely because Commissioner Schrader is also working on this issue at the Associated of Oregon Counties. And if we have enough minds going in the right direction, maybe we can figure that out. Last Friday, I hosted a tour of the Willamette Falls with legislators and elected officials, thanking them for their support in allocating monies from the state legislature for our walkway and our locks projects down there. At the last Metro meeting that we had last Friday, the Metro Council ratified the Riverwalk Agreement with all 4 government agencies. We signed on, Oregon City, Metro, and State of Oregon, on that, and that's a big deal. Doesn't sound like much. It's a huge, huge, huge deal. We have 4 government agencies working together on a common goal to achieve something that's going to be great. I also toured a housing with Clackamas County HUD Housing with Ed Hall. He's a county representative from Senator Merkley's office. And when I was on a falls tour with him, he approached me about the housing needs and says, well, Ed, you need to come out and take a look at our HUD housing. That's a different portfolio that we have, that we're trying to get permission from HUD to sell our World War II housing because it's now in a desirable area, asking the senators' help so we can redouble our efforts and replace it on a 4-to-1 basis for affordable housing, low-income housing, Section 8 housing, whatever you want to attach to that. And so I will be meeting with the senator's office in Portland, teleconferencing the officials at HUD, to explain to them the very unique situation we have in Clackamas County and our plans for going forward on that. We've been talking about this since I became a commissioner, and they're just now paying attention to us. That's how long it's taken. And as we recognize in all areas, communication is key, so hopefully we can get the message across that this is a very good thing. Now, Mary, the dogs. This is Greta. She is a little beagle babe through and through, 20 pounds. She will sit when asked. Yummy snacks are one of her favorite things. Come down and see her in person. You'll like her, and we know she will like you. For more information about Greta and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services, 503-655-8628, or go on our website, clackamas.us/dogs. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Well, I just wanted to touch base a little bit or remind everyone, I appreciate the little thing there. It's Oak Grove, libraries, trees, libraries, trees, libraries, trees. But the town hall, I think what I thought was a little bit refreshing to some degree was the fact that people brought up the road issue nearby on River Road, and that transportation issue kind of was a strong part of that message that came out both beginning and the end of the town hall. And I wasn't that long ago, and I know I mentioned it that evening at our town hall, that the last time I heard a lot of concern, it was actually on Oatfield, and a lot of the neighbors up there, and I can't remember what public forum that came up in, but that is a recurring theme. If you look at the north-south 3 roads that between Oregon City or along the line there in Milwaukee is Oatfield, River Road, and of course McLaughlin. And if there's ever a wreck or an issue on McLaughlin, they just jump on those streets, and it just creates havoc. And how that's related to a conversation earlier today about libraries comes back that when the proposal was to put the library up on Oatfield Road, that was one of the concerns. And so I wanted to segue into libraries. I attended the LDAC meeting. Mr. Krupp was and Mr. Story spoke at that event, or were at the table, and it was nice to see the first ever properly formed LDAC meeting since the inception of the measure in 2008. But so I think everyone got a little bit of 101, a lot of new faces that were there, and there were a few comments earlier in the day about the timing of the meeting or notification of the meeting, and I do want to say that probably the answer came at the very last couple minutes of the meeting when they talked about when's the next meeting, and what was revealed at the end of that meeting was that they had done a doodle poll for a meeting, and Tuesday nights happened to be the night that worked out for the best for these new members, these newly seated members, and that was their choosing of the meeting night. Not any deliberate attempt on the county or county staff to exclude anyone. And I think they settled on the second Tuesday, which was the night of that. So, this library issue is huge, and however we come across a solution or whatever that solution is, I think that being able to serve the future population is really important. But I think the discussion at the LDAC meeting that was seemed to be relatively mutual was a concern for long-term stable funding of libraries for all libraries in the county. And a number of people approached me before the meeting. I got there early, and of course at the end of the meeting, that were concerned about that as well. And so that will continue to be on our radar, that we make sure that we have stable funding, and of course a lot of acknowledgement about Milwaukee taking the right steps to put on their measure for May, the improvements for the Leading Library. And I just want to, give a little bit of a shout out to people in Milwaukee. That's a worthwhile thing to support, and it's a small amount of money, and I encourage people in Milwaukee to support that on May 17th. That's all I have for today.
Okay, thank you. We have the Fair Board tonight, and they always serve free pie. So just want to brag about that. We have a community leaders meeting next Tuesday, C4 Metro Subcommittee next Wednesday, and Metro Regional Leadership Forum next Friday. This last week, some of the things we viewed and or made decisions on. We viewed a Willamette Falls update, we had a study done of the economic impacts of our county seat here on Oregon City, and it was a huge number. My recollection is that $58 million is brought into this city and used by our employees and our activities here. So that was an answer to a rather constant appeal for a hosting fee from us for the privilege of being in this city. And I like to remind people that we were the first county, which means there wasn't any cities here. It was just the county. We were here first. So I'm glad that Oregon City has agreed to pay us a hosting fee for being here. No, I'm so serious from Korea. But I think I'll get some flack for that. But so we also had the county social media policy reviewed. My gosh, since we put some money into it in 2013 to change our website, now the social media is really more and more every year, every month, is the way to communicate with people. Whether they be young or older, it is the wave of the future. So I'm glad we're at the the point edge of that in furthering that communication method. We went through and voted 4-1 to expand our CBX system. That's our dark fiber network. We have saved school districts, especially, huge amounts of money. I mean, well, they might have 15 schools and pay $6,000 a month for each. We've lowered that to about $350 per hookup, which means that that money saved could be used for the primary function, and that is teaching children. I wanted to announce that the town halls, I have it here, I know I do. It doesn't matter, she's got it there. The 2016 town hall meetings remaining for this year are June 15th in Molalla, 6 p.m., and August 3rd, 6 p.m. again in West Lynn, and October 5th, boring. All right. So, I mean, why not? And so, also, the last thing I want to tell you is that we will not have a business meeting this next Thursday, and there's a reason for that. Being held is the Child Abuse Summit at the Red Lion at Jansen Beach. Now, this is really important stuff because family violence is long-lasting, and especially when observed by children. If you have not taken the ACE test, the Adverse Childhood Experience Test, it's simply 10 questions. The higher you rank, the more problems you had in your home when you were growing up, and it affects your lives. A lot of times people grow up with great anxieties, depression, mental illness, certainly get into drug addiction, and it really, that can be intervened upon and changed with a lot of nurturing and education, but I strongly recommend that those who are interested consider attending the Child Abuse Summit this next week. It's over a 3 or 4 day period of time. And as part of that, I believe it's on Thursday, yes, it's on Thursday night as part of that in the same location as the Camp Hope fundraiser. Now, this is Clackamas Women's Services. They put together the Camp Hope, and we helped contribute to that last year, to bring in disadvantaged and high ACE score children and give them an opportunity to know that there's another life out there, a life of love and a life of hope. And so I'd highly recommend, if you're interested in that you definitely attend the summit, but let alone on Thursday night. This is a fundraiser. They're looking for money, but if you have money and you care about these things as much as we do, I strongly recommend you show up. Ladies and gentlemen, that's about it. It's been almost a 2-hour meeting, pretty rare for us. That's because we like to be so loquacious, I think. And there being no further business before the commission this day, this meeting is adjourned.